Today's the day. It's the big reveal. Let's take a tour of our yard and our brand new grill studio. I'll share what I learned, what went well, and maybe what didn't go so well along the way. Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dead BBQ, and today I have 3 chapters for you. The first one, I'm going to show you the complete grill studio space and everything that was included in that. Second, some of you have been asking to see how this fits into the yard, so I can expand on our design process, what we learned, as well as some of the other fire features that are going on at Casa de Smoking Dad. And third, if you're in a project yourself like this, I'll give you some of the inner details of the table, the dimensions. There's not really a lot of information online on what sort of size cutouts you need for the Classic Joe or the Big Joe Series 3 behind me, so I'll show you my rough notes and how that all came together. Enough waiting, let's get started. So let's start with the structure itself. So we've positioned this right off of the back of the house attached to the kitchen as well as the garage. So there's just easy access for extra supplies. From a design perspective, we landed on a hip roof structure since that matches the house. So our kitchen is coming out the back of the house on a hip roof structure. And so this is actually a mirror image of those dimensions to help give some symmetry to the yard and make it look like it was built to be here versus something that we just bolted on after the fact. So for the design itself, there's a couple things that we really wanted to prioritize. So this is true no matter what size table I've had. I've always felt like I could use more workspace. So to solve that, for this project, we went and added a kitchen island, which will give us more than enough space to be preparing some of those sides or even the main dish itself and making it convenient to throw on the grill. I've had a chance to get a couple cooks under the belt since this part of the project was complete at least, and it's made a world of difference. In terms of the sizing and the space, so we've got our kitchen island right behind us for our work area. The boxes are both identical, so I designed them to fit a Big Joe, so obviously I can get the Big Joe in. If I ever decide, to upgrade the Classic 3 to a Big Joe, I didn't want to have a table that wouldn't be able to accommodate that. So they're both the exact same cutout size and box. And then the box itself for the Classic has a riser. So later on in the 3rd chapter of this video, I'll get into the dimensions of that. So in case you want to know the height off the ground or the size of the cutout itself. And so this leaves a bit of a spare space behind me over here under the window. And so this is lower so that I can drop on the Joe Jr. So when I'm using that, and it's not joining us on weekend camp trips right now, so it's in the garage for more convenient access, the Junior can go there. Or maybe someday we want to throw something like a pizza oven. That is the dimensions that I would need to have the right height and heat-proof surface with granite countertop underneath it, if that's something that we wanted to add over to that corner. And I did leave a little bit of a cutout space here to either bring out something like the Kettle Joe when I'm cooking on that, or maybe someday if we add something like an offset, who knows, down the road, that there's a little bit of space to fit that all under the structure. Anyways, that was the idea for future planning, is to try and design this once, regardless if we do those other things down the road. Didn't want to be in a redesign, rebuild in a couple years time if that's something that we'd like to add to our backyard. Enough about the future, let me show you what the table looks like here and now. So let's start with the table. So this is the only area of the project that I have a little bit of disappointment. And so this is maybe because I hold a high bar for a table, I like to tackle my own projects. And up until this point, I've built every table that I've used. And I enjoy that, but I didn't have the time or I think the skill level to get into things like all the different pull-out drawers. And I wanted something that would last and hold up to the elements. And so I found a company called NatureCast that makes grill tables specifically designed for the Big Green Egg and Kamado Joe. I thought I would have solved all my problems. It's specially made for the Kamado, so I don't have to worry about design. They're made to be outdoors, so it'll be rigid and stand up to everything that Mother Nature wants to throw at it. And from a time perspective, other than signing the checks, I don't have to do anything, and the team would take care of all of that. But on the slight area of disappointment, this is where it's not quite living up to my expectations from a table built specifically for Kamados. And let me show you what I mean. So the first area that is a bit of a challenge is storing accessories for the grill itself. So this bottom drawer here, when you pull it out, this would be a great spot to store the slow roller. Unfortunately, with the width of the pull-out drawer and the sidewalls, it loses just enough space to be able to fit the slow roller in, and so there's nowhere for that to go. And so to compensate for that, I've had to throw it into my middle drawer here, and I'm able to store both the Big Joe and the Classic Joe slow roller. But if I was doing something like the Joe Tisserie, I have nowhere to fit the divide and conquer rack. That won't fit there either, nor does my Dojo fit or my Joe Tisserie in this center cabinet. And so all of that to say, for a cabinet designed specifically for the Kamado Joe, there's a couple big shortfalls here, whether it's the slow roller doesn't fit, divide and conquer rack doesn't fit, or common accessories like the Joe Tisserie or Dojo. They're all now sitting in the garage. And that was one of the things that we wanted to do when we tackled this project, is get some of that space back out of our garage and have it all contained for ease of access within the grill studio. So now that we've covered the areas where we're a little disappointed, let's get into some of the things that came together exactly as planned and I really love about the space. So the drawer system on this island's worked really well. So starting on the back side, we have a bit of an overhang with some stools, which has already proven useful when we've had some friends over. It's just a natural area for people to congregate as I'm able to remove food from the grill and have a bit of a sitting area. So this idea from a design perspective, absolutely would recommend doing, or do it again if I had to. The drawers, so starting on my top right here, I have my knife drawer, so get my favorite Dow Strong knives I've just kept out here, make that nice and easy for quick and easy access. The second drawer, just got some of my common use supplies, whether that's gloves or the latex nitro gloves or my Thermapen if I wanted to get quick spot temperatures. I keep that out here. And in the bottom drawer, I've just got some of those larger things that don't have anywhere else to fit nicely. So the Kamado Joe wok or my briner bucket for doing things like pickle brined wings or something like that sit really nice in there. On my left side, starting with spices, so I put my most common used pre-made rubs or some of the ones that I've made at home. I just throw that in there for some seasoning ingredients just to make it nice and easy. I don't have to run in and out of the kitchen every time I'm looking to grab something. Second drawer down, I have some of my cooking utilities. So I have my conduction top. So I want to get a little sauce going. I can just throw that on here, and I've got power on each side of the island just to make that easy. And speaking of power and design features, I do have an outlet in the back corner behind each Kamado Joe. So when I want to have something like the Joe Tisserie or any other accessory that may come out, or I command that I have access to power, and that's nice and easy. I don't have to have wires running as a tripping area through the cooking area. And then finally, in the bottom drawer here, just have again some of those larger items like the grill basket for doing some great rotisserie wings. So now we've got the table covered. Let's cover a couple other things about this space. So that's lighting and moving smoke. So for lighting, there's a few things that we've done to get some light in here. So first is a low voltage lighting. So we've tied in a couple spots on each side of the structure so we get some downlight, as well as some pot lights just to help illuminate the poles at night so you don't walk into them if you're navigating the yard. So those are on all the time, and they're just a gentle light that won't light up the neighborhood, but it makes it usable. And so if we're just grilling for our family, that's often more than enough light in order to be able to see the space. And that's entirely all I used in my previous videos. I reused actually the same spotlights when I had the table, which is actually sitting right here. This is where it used to end. And that provided enough light for me to see, and almost enough light for you to be able to see on video as well, even though it didn't come through as well. So to help amp up the light, we've added a second stage lighting system. And so we've got some LED pot lights that are on a separate switch, which I'm hoping as the winter months come. Speaking of the winter months, we also have some heaters up above as well to help add a little bit of extra heat. So between the heaters and the lights, I'm hoping to be able to record come darkness, rain, or snow, and be able to keep turning out some of these videos throughout the whole year, regardless of what Mother Nature may have in mind. Now, the ceiling fan is something that we added for two reasons. One, it's placed kind of over the island to help try and keep flies or bees, wasps away from the food. And so far, that's not working. They still find their way to the food. The other reason, or two reasons, is one, it is moving some air. So on a day like today where it's, feels like over 100 degrees Fahrenheit with the humidity, that's helping keep it a little bit cooler in here, as well as dissipating smoke. So depending on the type of cook that we're doing, if you're doing something really, really smoky, I do see a little bit of smoke just kind of get up into the roof and linger before that fan pushes it out. And so this is working pretty well. I was worried that by not having some sort of smoke extraction unit that it might just be a little bit of a smoke cloud, but this has worked really well. I haven't noticed any smoke lingering up more than just a few seconds. And so whether it's the height of the structure, so we're just over, I think it's 9-10 feet before you get into the ceiling itself, which is that hip roof that is allowing enough air to come in from the 3 open sides, or with partnership of the ceiling fan, able to help push that smoke out. But so far, really, really, really happy with this. And the only thing that we did is add a little bit of a darker stain to the wood inside, just in case that smoke lingers. We didn't want it to discolor something if we'd gone with a light pine. So that's it. The only thing that you may be wondering is, why not add a sink or an outdoor fridge? And so for us, being from north in Canada, the winter is quite harsh on these things, and so I didn't want to deal with freezing pipes or the fridge. And I have a full fridge just inside the garage here where I'm able to keep plenty of supplies stocked, so it's not too far out of the way. But if you live in a climate that affords that, it would definitely be nice to have a beverage fridge and or a working sink here, just not the space with this size or dimensions of our table. Let's move into some the other features of the yard. So you've seen some videos recorded in here while this was under construction, but this is our outdoor pergola. And so this was designed originally as a wood burning fireplace with some supplemental heaters above, but we had to switch this to gas. So we have a neighbor, I won't point who's called the fire department on us every time that we went to use that. And so we just weren't able to get the enjoyment out of this wood burning fireplace, since this design, even though the chimney goes up more than 12 feet to code, it's just throwing too much smoke, and it was just no fun in terms of wanting to sit down and enjoy a fire and just wait for the fire department to show up and shut that all down. But we've come up with a solution. Let me show you that. So where I'm located, the fire code has sort of 2 things. You're fine unless someone complains, which is our situation, or if you're cooking. And so I found a solution to cover both of those fronts. And so I first discovered a solo stove at a friend's cottage, and I was just blown away. A, that this fire pit can sit on a deck and not do any damage, and I've tested it many times, and that's absolutely true. And 2 is that it's a smokeless fire pit. And so I was able to spend a whole night at my friend's cottage and not get any smoke on me or my clothes the next day. I couldn't smell any campfire whatsoever, and it's almost too good to be true. Can't believe it. So we got ourselves our very own solo stove, and I've been using it now for the past month, and I've had 0 problems. And even though maybe you can see a little bit of wisp of clean blue smoke coming, when you come out of the house and your nostrils don't have any fire or camp smell, just right out that door to here, you can't smell it. And so this has been remarkable. I don't know exactly how it works, but I'm sold. And while I was venting on my kind of personal account about having to lose our fireplace and utility, Solo Stove was actually kind enough to do 2 things. They sent me a cooktop for it, because if the fire department does show up and you have a proper cooking grid, not just wieners on a coat hanger, you're allowed to do cooking fires, and so that will help keep me out of the hot seat. So now we're going to move on into some of the actual dimensions. So if you're planning an outdoor kitchen or grill table space yourself, that you can maybe take some of these measurements, and that might help inform your plan. But before I forget, I just want to say thanks. I just mentioned the Solo Stove, but I want to thank all of you who do use the links down below. These videos, while I love sharing with you, they don't provide a lot even in terms of covering the cost of the food. And so when you guys help out by ordering anything from the link below, that is something that just helps make sure that we continue producing those videos. So I really do appreciate those who do that. No pressure if you're not already doing that. And another thing that I've been a little slow to turn on, but I've added a Join Me membership page where I'm going to be doing some live hangouts with you once a month. And so if you got questions, you got a trouble sorting issue that you want to troubleshoot live and go through that, I'm going to be hanging out with my members once a month. So if you're interested in learning more about the tiers and the benefits, just check out my Join Me button down below. Enough of that. Let's get into some measurements. So I'm going to first grab a measuring tape. We're going to go through the height of the work surfaces, the width, the dimensions between everything, as well as the table box, since this is really the one that there's just not a lot of good information. There's a couple PDFs for some older model Joes. It's really hard to find things that include the distance that you need to have from the wall for the hinge in order to get the Joe to open without interfering with anything. So let me grab my trusty tape measure and rejoin you, and we'll start going through some of the measurements before signing off for today's video. Okay, let's start off with the island itself. So using the granite as the measure here, this is 63 inches. Width, 32 inches. Height, including the granite, 36 inches. The little table over here, which again is a lower height because of the Joe Jr., which sits on a stand. If I put it up here, the grill is getting close to eye level, and that's just not comfortable for utility. So we've dropped this down, both to help accommodate the window, even though it would fit, but so that the Joe Jr. is at a more comfortable level. Or if we ever want to do something like I mentioned, a small little pizza oven out here might be a lot of fun. Having that lower accessible height would be great. So its width, about 41 inches wide, 32 inches tall. Compared to the main table, 36 inches tall. The total width of the table is 94 inches. Let me bring you a little bit closer, because this is the part you really need to pay attention to if you're building one yourself, is the boxes and the dimensions from the back as well as the side. Plus the height here matters, because the first table that I built, I thought it was great, and I dropped on my Joe-tisserie, and if this is too high, there's not room for that motor to sit down without striking your countertop. And so I'll show you that, as well as this little box, which I've used to help raise the height of the Kamado Joe Classic 3, so it's a similar height to the Big Joe. So this is being taken care of by warranty, but while I was mentioning earlier a little bit of my disappointment with NatureCast is they build these things specifically for Kamados, but this extension is something that I asked in order to make the height of the Classic the same as the Big Joe, but I can remove it and drop this granite down to be the exact same dimensions of the Big Joe. But when we've done that, we've installed the Classic, it won't come through on camera here, the granite has cracked in half on the Kamado Joe Classic 3, whereas the Big Joe that weighs more than 200 pounds extra, it's been fine. So there's something about this design process which isn't quite sufficient for the weight of the Kamado Joe Classic 3. And I don't think it's a heat issue, because I've had the Big Joe up at a higher temperature and I've done a couple more cooks on it. But you'll definitely want to keep that in mind depending on which table design you go with. If you're adding a little bit of a riser, make sure that it has the proper support so you don't end up cracking your granite. Anyways, let me give you the width and depth of each box. So each box is just about 30 inches wide, and for the depth of the box, let me bring you over to the Kamado Joe Big Joe, since this is a 4-inch riser. So not including the granite, that is 21 inches, so you're gaining with the granite just about 1.25 inches of extra height, which equals itself out top and bottom. For distance from the back, you need about 5.5 to 6 inches in order for the dome to be able to open, including if you've got this swung open all the way without hitting. And so just keep that in mind, that you're going to want that 6-inch gap. So that's bringing this whole table out further from the wall. So from the wall, I'm 37.5 inches. And for the back of the table to the front here, where the Joe is in, that's just shy of 32 inches for the table itself. So the extra height is just giving that clearance so that the Joe can open from the back. So we're nearly wrapped up. Let me know in the comments if there's any questions or things that I didn't cover that you'd like to know. I'd also love to hear if you'd like to see me put that cooking grid on the solo stove to good use. I'm thinking a meat hook and another T-bone steak. We'll drill a hole, hang it, cook it right over the coals, and then get those coals flying and sear it off above. But I'd love to hear what you guys might like to see in terms of keeping me out of the fire department's naughty list and actually be cooking on it. More than open to some suggestions. Anyways, that's it for another one. I hope you really enjoyed today's video. Thanks for hanging out and all the ways that you support me through the channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one. But until then, don't be afraid to fire it up.